Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of Pieces of Lily. Today we're going to talk about how autism presents in girls. Oftentimes people assume that certain characteristics of autism go across the board, male and female, and that's simply not the case. There are some differences. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what autism may look like in your young girl and even in young women. The first topic or first category that I want to discuss with you all is self-stimulatory behavior. A lot of girls go through this, they experience this, and they do it every day. So what are some examples of self-stimulatory behavior, right? If you notice finger tapping, always having to tap on something, that's an example of self-stimulatory behavior. Biting on the inside of the cheek all the time, or even the lip. Pushing in the corners of your eyes, staring at objects that are particularly shiny or just are really captivating is another sign of self-stimulatory behavior. And some examples of that would be like lava lamps, or like those nighttime projectors you can put in a child's room. A lot of times they will stare at those things. And I think the last example that I'll give is also of like wobbling on the ankles while standing. My daughter used to do that quite a bit. So those are some examples of self-stimulatory behavior. The important thing that we need to know about these behaviors is that they do tend to get brushed off easily. People will chalk it up to the child being quirky. And then also, something that's important for us to know is that these behaviors, although they may not seem extreme or anything like that, if a child is told to stop doing these behaviors, it will cause them extreme distress. So that's the takeaway piece with self-stimulatory behavior that kind of separates someone who's not on the spectrum from someone who is on the spectrum that does these things. The next thing that is typical or that's commonly seen in girls on the spectrum is issues with social skills, but they're not usually as extreme as they may present in boys. These girls tend to be good at mimicking or being like chameleons and integrating into the social structures in their school and things like that. They can make friends, but oftentimes they feel like they're struggling to make friends. They, although may have some friends, they feel like they don't have enough, and they struggle in those relationships. Another thing that you will find from a social skill standpoint with girls on the spectrum is that they tend to be pretty smart, but when it comes to asking for help with certain tasks, they struggle with that. For example, just basic needs. So the little girl may be great at math, but she may struggle to express to her teacher that she's struggling to see the dry erase board, or she may struggle to express to the teacher that the kid next to me is a distraction. She may struggle with expressing that, but she may be good at the work that you put in front of her. So it's important to know that. Another thing that girls tend to struggle with who are on the spectrum is executive functioning. So what does that mean? That means actually executing a task. So girls on the spectrum will oftentimes come off as procrastinators. They'll wait till the last minute. An example of this would be my daughter Aaliyah. She gets her homework on Mondays. It's due by Friday. If we left it up to what she wanted to do, she'd probably be working on it Thursday night and into Friday morning. We have, with ABA therapy and with a lot of effort and energy, we have gotten her to the point where she gets her homework on Monday. It's usually done by Monday night, if not Tuesday morning, and then she has the rest of the week to not necessarily be free, but she doesn't have to worry or think about that one thing. Another example of struggles with executive functioning, for example, would be disorganization or lack of motivation to do things. These girls sometimes will come off as being lazy. So for example, I'll tell my twin daughters, go clean up your room. They may have 30 toys on the floor, go clean up your room. And Aaliyah will pick up 2 or 3 and feel like she's done, that she's done her part, that, you know, she's done with this. And her sister will be like, no, like, you've got to help me finish picking these toys up. Yeah, we had 30 on the floor, you took 3 away, but we still have 27 pieces of toys that we need to pick up. Like, come on, help me. And she'll really like have to push. And, you know, sometimes one of her parents or, you know, grandparents or whoever's in the household with them at the time will, you know, have to push as well. And it, you know, she comes off as lazy. And I'm sure that's true for a lot of young girls on the spectrum. The next topic that I want to discuss is that young girls oftentimes will have extreme special interests. So what does that mean? There is a level of intensity of interest, and there's an intensity of an interest and a level of knowledge that is extreme. So it's not uncommon for kids to love certain characters, love certain toys, artists, musicians, whoever. It's not uncommon. You know, I had an extreme fascination with the Spice Girls in the 90s, you know, or the Backstreet Boys or whatever. We all have our interests, right? This kicks it up a notch. So, for example, my daughter loves LOL Surprise. I'm sure most of you are familiar. If you know a little girl, they probably at some point in their very young childhood enjoyed LOL Surprise products. My daughter, although she does not have all the LOL Surprises in the world, she knows every character, like every doll's name. She knows what comes with them if you purchase them. She knows every single one. There's not one that you can point out that she won't know information about that one. It's an extreme, over-the-top fascination, interest, love for LOL Surprise, to where she's an expert. And a lot of times little girls that are on the spectrum will be or feel compelled to tell you everything they know about a topic. Even if you just happen to say, hey Leah, I like your doll. You know, what's her name? And she's like, oh, it's you know, BR Cutie. But then she goes on and tells you about everything she knows about LOL Surprise dolls, or everything she knows about that particular doll, even when it's not solicited information. So that is, I think, a key takeaway with that is that it's a little bit extreme. And then the final thing that oftentimes we see with girls on the spectrum is, and boys too, this is a big thing, is sensory issues, you know, and it's all senses, right? So let's talk about some examples. The first example I can think of is noises. So like 4th of July, New Year's Eve, the fireworks. It's loud, it's overwhelming, it's not normal, you know. That is something that oftentimes will trigger children on the spectrum. I know, especially when I was a much younger mom, that I honestly shied away from taking my daughter to public places for fear of how she might respond in public restrooms. You know, for you and I, we're desensitized to the intense amount of sounds. But for a young child on the spectrum, it's all they can think about. So let's think back to the last time you were in a public restroom, all the noises you heard. You heard the loud toilet. You heard the loud hand dryer or air dryer. You heard people allowing the stall doors to slam shut, go back and forth. You hear the people talking, chatting. You may hear a baby crying, whatever. All of these noises are extremely overwhelming. And I remember when, you know, 3-4 years ago, she was literally clawing at me to get out of the bathroom because it was just so loud. She was so fearful of like the air dryers to dry your hands. Like it was unreal, to the point where I just avoided taking her places because I didn't know how to deal with it. Now, obviously, this was before she was diagnosed, before I knew all the tools, before I had all the tools to be able to work with her. And now, I mean, those things don't bother her as much, but you know, honestly, New Year's Eve is coming up. People are going to do fireworks. It may bother her. Another sensory thing would be food, right? Little girls who are on the spectrum tend to be fussy eaters, and they don't like very specific things. And those things include condiments, sauces, any of those things. So, you know, ketchup, mayo, mustard, gravy, all of that stuff, like if that's on their food, it's a wrap for them. They're not going to partake in it. So that is something that is commonly seen. Something sensory that a lot of people may not think about, but is a reality for autism children, is the tags in our clothes. They are extremely stimulating. So the tag on the back of your shirt, the tag in the back of your pants, even the tag in a house shoe can be extremely overwhelming. So for us in particular, you know, in shirts, a lot of times I will cut the tags, especially if they're the ones on the side that are on the inside. They'll drive her insane. She'll have the worst day ever if she's got to wear something with that tag in it. Now, jeans, we've been able to figure out ways to get around it. Initially, I did cut them out. But now, like, if her underwear's up high enough and stuff like that, we can buffer it. It's fine. She has some house shoes that we recently got her, and they had a tag in it. So we had to cut those out because it was just overwhelming, the sensory aspect. Those are things that people don't think about, but it's a reality. And it's just something that, you know, we really have to be mindful of. Spandex. Oh my gosh, spandex is a huge thing in my household. You know, my daughter Aaliyah loves dresses, loves skirts. If she could be in those 24/7, she would. She wears nightgowns to bed. She hates pants. She truly hates pants. But obviously we're about to go into winter. It's December 14th. She needs, you know, maybe some leggings under a dress or something like that. It's an absolute no-go for her. The spandex makes her feel itchy. Same is true with, like, I wouldn't even dare to try to put tights on her. I've never tried to put tights on her. Because it's itchy, it's tight, and she hates it. So we've been able to compromise and just put blue jeans underneath it, but we can't even do like the jeggings because they're too tight and they're spandexy. So that is a real thing for children on the spectrum. And then the last thing that I can think of that you will see with little girls in relation to sensory issues is toe walking. So that was actually one of the first signs of her autism. You know, it was before she was 2 years old, I noticed she would toe walk. And I kind of was able to pin it down to at transitions. So as she transitioned from one room to the next, she would get on her toes. And then we were able to dig in even further and notice that when she was on a carpet or on a rug, she was fine. She was flat-footed. She was walking perfectly fine. But when she transitioned to laminate, hardwood, tile surfaces, she was immediately on her toes, even with her shoes on. It didn't matter if she was barefoot, had socks on, tennis shoes on, she was on her toes. And she actually started developing like little sores on her toes from where she was, you know, forcing herself to do something that was very unnatural. And she ultimately went to physical therapy for it. We worked through it. And it's not so much of a thing. Now, I will say at 6 years old, she absolutely hates socks, spandex, right? It's, you know, a battle to wear socks with some tennis shoes. When she's in the house, she does not, you know, she's very picky about what's going to be on her feet. When she's in the carpeted areas, so like in our bonus room or her bedroom, or I have rugs in some of my common areas, laminate underneath or luxury vinyl underneath, she'll be barefoot on those carpeted areas, but she does, you know, prefer to have her house shoes on if she's going to have to touch that luxury vinyl or the tile in our bathrooms. And I think she's just a lot more self-aware where she regulates and adjusts as she needs to for those things. So, so that's great. But that came with time, that came with age. You know, like I said earlier, you know, she started exhibiting signs of autism, at least that I could recognize, just before 2 years of age. So, you know, it's been a lot of work, but we're making some progress. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. I'll be bringing you more content soon. Bye, guys.